Hi guys, Olive here. Today I'm here to do my May 2017 wrap-up and my June TBR. I read some really great books in May and I'm very excited to tell you all about them. The first book that I finished in May was a book called The Lilly Theater, written by Lulu Wang and translated from the Dutch by Hester Velmans. This is a coming-of-age story set in China after the Cultural Revolution. We follow a young girl named Lian who is living at a work camp for children while both of her parents are serving time at their own work camps for being intellectuals. After Lian's mother appeals to the director of the work camp that she is currently serving time at due to Lian's severe case of vitiligo, Lian is moved from her current children's work camp to her mother's work camp. Her mother's camp is a camp for intellectuals, hence the reason why her mother was sent there in the first place. And so, because this camp is not intended for children, Lian starts to receive instruction, starts to receive an education from the fellow prisoners at this camp. This beginning section was my favorite part of this novel. Seeing Lian get instruction from these intellectuals whose backgrounds are in a variety of different fields really brought up some interesting points. Lian grows very close specifically to the man who is teaching her history. And there was a very interesting discussion had in this book about how one remains positive when going through a horrible situation. Lian understandably finds it very difficult to remain positive and optimistic about her country and politics, given everything that has happened in recent history. I thought this was a very timely discussion, and I was hoping that it would continue through the rest of the novel. But once Lian and her mother are released from the work camp, this novel drastically changes into a standard coming-of-age tale. The novel then focuses very highly on Lian's relationship with her friend Kim, who is of a drastically lower social class than she herself is. So the first third of this novel, I would say, really had me engaged. There were some gorgeous descriptions of nature and the existential questions that the characters are faced with, and thus the questions that the author is asking of you as a reader, were extremely interesting. But when the novel shifts to the standard coming-of-age tale, it is infinitely less challenging and meaningful, in my opinion, and the way that it bounces around haphazardly made me completely unable to give it any more than 3 stars. Rather disappointing. Another book that I found myself disappointed by was Peter the Great by Derek Wilson. I finally finished it. I will discuss more of my feelings on this book in the next episode of Russian History Retreat, which I swear is coming. But to sum up my feelings very simply, it is impossible to cram the tremendous life of Peter the Great into a measly 200 pages. Pick up Robert K. Massey's book instead. The next book that I finished in May was my random pick for the month of April that I ended up pushing to May's TBR. That was The Glorious Heresies by Lisa McInerney. This book was the 2016 winner of the Bailey's Women's Prize for Fiction. It is set in Ireland in the city of Cork and follows a group of characters that are interconnected by a crime that happens in the very first scene of the novel. We follow the lives of all of these characters in the wake of this crime. We see how this crime plays into the larger crime scene of the city, and we discover why it happened in the first place. The best way that I can describe this novel is that it sounds like a growl at the back of your throat. It evokes the smell of taking a deep breath in a cigarette smoky room, and it feels like crying into your beer. All of the characters in this novel are pieces of shit, undeniably so. But it is up to you as a reader as you go through this novel to decide which of them are pieces of shit by choice and which ones of them are simply coping with impossible situations with urban decay as a backdrop. This is a dark, moody, and extremely crude novel, but at the same time, it is witty and completely compelling. This one got a solid 4 stars from me. The next book that I finished was my random pick off of my TBR for the month of May, and that was A Reunion of Ghosts by Judith Clare Mitchell. I would consider this mainly a historical fiction novel. In it, we follow 3 grown sisters, Lady, V, and Delph. The book hops around in time, but the main story is set in 1999, and these 3 sisters have decided to commit suicide on December 31st. They resolve to do so not just because they are carrying truckloads of baggage from childhood, but because all three of their lives have been riddled with tragedy, which they believe to be a direct result of a curse on their family due to some of the horrible actions of their great-great-grandfather. Their great-great-grandfather was the chemist who developed poison gas used during World War I, and he developed an early iteration of the gas that was later used in gas chambers during World War II. Every generation following their great-great-grandfather has been plagued with hardship, and nearly every single member of that side of the family has eventually committed suicide. This is what leads the sisters to believe that their family is cursed, and so in some ways they believe that their own suicides are almost an inevitability. The novel hops back and forth in time, so some sections are set in the present day, 1999, and then we get to go backward in time to find out more about the histories of the sisters and find out more about the histories of their relatives, including this great-great-grandfather. Although it was extremely dark, I did find it enjoyable. The great-great-grandfather chemist is based on the real historical figure who actually did develop this poison gas. Lots of real historical figures and occurrences are woven into the story to make it feel extremely real. Although I was very engaged during my reading of the novel and was able to finish it very quickly because I was so engaged, now that it's been a little while since I finished it, I'm finding it not staying with me very much. My main test of how great a book is how long it stays in my mind after I'm done reading it, and I'm feeling this one slipping away. I did give this one 3.5 stars, rounded up to 4 stars on Goodreads, because of all the delicious snark. The next book I finished in May was Thank You for Arguing by Jay Heinrichs. This was a book off of my Young Professional TBR that I had been looking forward to reading for a very long time, and sadly, this was another one that proved disappointing. Supposedly, this is a book about how to be a better persuasive speaker, and using lessons from classic rhetoric to improve your persuasiveness. I think it's very important to be a persuasive speaker out there in the world in general, but particularly if you're in the business world, so I was really looking forward to reading this. However, I found this book to be a jumbled mess that dresses up classical rhetoric with the author's personal anecdotes about raising his children. I took very little out of this book, unfortunately. Every suggestion that the author had I found to be something that I either already knew or could have guessed had I given it a second's worth of thought. For example, one of his suggestions was to seem unsure of yourself or even a bit timid at the beginning of a presentation and then slowly build confidence as you go on, and that it seems more natural if you do it that way. But who isn't going to naturally do that during a presentation? Another suggestion along those same lines was to avoid eye contact until you're ready to make a big point, and then make eye contact and make it. My feelings toward this book ended up being similar to those that I had toward How to Win Friends and Influence People, and that it feels at a certain point, if you're using enough of these tricks, that you're being kind of scammy. Like, I feel if I was trying to persuade anyone who already knew me and I acted timid at the beginning of a speech, they would know something was up. How am I supposed to fool someone into thinking that I am timid at the beginning of a presentation if that is not normally how I behave? Have I ever struck you as timid? I have to imagine that there are better books out there about this subject matter. If there are, please let me know. And the very last book that I finished in May, which was my favorite book of the month, was Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. This was one of the classic books that I wanted to make a priority in 2017, and my God, am I glad I included it in that list. This book is set in the town of Hollingford, in which lives a long-widowed country doctor who is worried that his teenage daughter, Molly, needs a positive female influence in her life as she is approaching marriageable age. He decides that the best way to obtain this positive female influence is to remarry. His choice of second wife is the former governess of the aristocratic family of the area. This woman is a widow herself and has a daughter around the same age as Molly. So begins the saga of their blended family and the tale of the complex relationships between this family and the other people in their town and people in their surrounding area as well. I didn't think it was possible for me to love a classic more than I love Pride and Prejudice and Jane Eyre, but this one may have it beat. All of the characters of this novel are so fully fleshed out that they feel like real living people. and they are all so intensely likable that I loved all of them, even when I detested some of their behavior. In essence, they felt like family to me. Molly is such a kind, loving, considerate person. She is the first character that I've ever read that I really aspire to be like. And her stepsister Cynthia, who can be so conceited and unfeeling, is at the same time charming and likable. And the wonderful thing about this book is that she is described as charming and likable and actually charms you as the reader and makes you like her, thus earning those titles. The intricate relationship that develops between Molly and Cynthia is so true to life. They love each other, they get frustrated with each other. They look out for each other. They envy the qualities that the other so easily possesses. It is by far the most realistic portrait of a female friendship that I have ever read. I adored it. It is now one of my all-time favorite books, and it is giving Margaret I some stiff competition for my favorite book of the year. Now that I've concluded my gushing, I would like to tell you about the books that I am currently reading and what I would like to read in June. I am nearly finished with The Tropic of Serpents by Marie Brennan, the second book in the Memoirs of Lady Trent series. I do not have much more of this book left to read. I think I'll be finishing it up in the next day or two. Because I was in need of an audiobook and this one was available at my library, I decided to pick up Cruel Beauty by Rosamund Hodge. This is a YA retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and I'm really enjoying it so far. The first book on my June TBR is appropriately titled June by Miranda Beverly Whittemore. I will be buddy reading this one with Jenny from Jenny King. Given my new yearly tradition to reread this book every year in June, I will be picking up one of my all-time favorite books, Rules of Civility by Amor Towles. I am also planning on reading Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. There is a Goodreads group run by Katie from The Mirrored Worlds. Over the past few months, Katie and a few other people in this Goodreads group have been going through Jane Austen's works. All the ones that they've picked up so far have been ones that I have previously read, but this is the first month that I can participate with one of the Jane Austen books I've not yet read. If you'd like to join in and read this with us, I will put a link to the Goodreads group down in the description box below. Also this month, I will be picking up another book off of my Young Professional TBR. This one is called The Episodic Career: How to Thrive at Work in the Age of Disruption by Farai Chideya. I will also be picking up The Prestige by Christopher Priest, which is one that I have been dying to get to and finally am going to pick up. And the last book that I will be picking up this month will be the random book off of my TBR per my new monthly tradition. Choice number 1 is In the Land of Invented Languages by Erika Ockrent. Choice number 2 is Fabergé's Eggs: The Extraordinary Story of the Masterpieces That Outlived an Empire by Toby Faber. And choice number 3 is The Diviners by Libba Bray. Although I am extremely tempted by the book on Fabergé eggs, I think I'm going to go with option number 1, In the Land of Invented Languages. I've been craving a nonfiction book on language, so this is actually perfect. So those were all the books that I read in May, what I am currently reading, and what I'm planning to read for June. If you've read any of these, heard about any of them, or want to read them now that I've talked about them, I would love to hear from you in the comment section below. Or you can reach me on a variety of places on social media. The links to all of my profiles are in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful start to your June, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.